Remove a plastic cover by removing retainer clips to replace the radiator for this Ford Mustang. Use a 5.5mm socket to remove the bottom plastic cover bolt. You can do it yourself, just take your time. The radiator drain plug was broken. I used a drive start bit socket T45 to remove the radiator drain plug. It was not the perfect size, but it was able to get the drain plug loose. Remember to use a drain pan to hold the radiator coolant once you remove the drain plug. If you remove the coolant reservoir cap, the radiator coolant will drain faster. Use a 10mm deep socket too. Just loosen a bolt nut here. Do not remove the bolt nut, just get it loose. Use a 532 socket to remove it like this. This will allow the radiator to detach from the AC condenser. Use a 10mm socket to remove a bolt from the other side of the radiator. Remove the top radiator hose like this. You can use locking pliers like this. Use a 5/16 socket to remove the coolant reservoir. Remove the power steering reservoir as well. You do not need to remove the complete coolant reservoir. You can just move it aside. Remove the radiator fan bolt. Take off the radiator fan. Look for the bolts holding the radiator fan. You can use a 5/16 socket to remove the radiator fan bolts. Remove the air intake hose with a 5/16 socket. I covered the mass airflow sensor with duct tape so it does not get dirty. I used a flathead screwdriver and a 90-degree bent nose long reach pliers to remove the fan connection plug. I pressed the plug connection clip with the pliers, and I used a flathead screwdriver to push it out at the same time. It was hard to take it off with my hand, so I had to use this method. Remove the upper bolts that hold the radiator bracket. You can take the radiator fan out by pulling it up once you have taken off the bolts and plug. Remove the bottom radiator hose. Remove this bolt to detach the radiator from the AC condenser. Remove this bolt as well to detach the radiator from the AC condenser. Remove another hidden bolt to detach radiator from the AC condenser. I used a universal joint socket adapter with a long socket extension to remove this bolt. Unclip the radiator dot from the AC condenser. Unclip the radiator from the AC condenser. I was unable to take off the radiator from the top. It was getting stuck. So I took off the radiator from the bottom, and it came out fairly easy. Comparing the old and new radiator, do not forget to put on the new cover screw pins. I installed the new radiator from the bottom. Add the cover screw pins before installing the radiator to make it easier. Put everything back together. Take your time, do not rush. You can do it. I use this gold color antifreeze. To bleed the air out from the coolant system, you can use a radiator coolant pressure tester and vacuum refill kit. I did not have a radiator coolant, pressure tester, and vacuum refill kit. A mechanic told me I could bleed this Ford Mustang from a coolant bleeder valve. So I looked for the coolant bleeder valve. I added the recommended gold coolant antifreeze. I filled up the coolant reservoir to its full level. I used this peak gold antifreeze. I used a ratchet and socket extension to loosen the coolant bleeder valve. The coolant level is full and the engine is off. No antifreeze came out when I unscrewed the bleeder valve. So then I turned on the car. I closed the bleeder valve before turning on the car. I opened up the bleeder valve. I did not like the fact that antifreeze was leaking down to the spark plugs and coils. So I looked for a different alternative. Another mechanic told me this. 06 Ford Mustang GT has a self-bleeding system. All you have to do is monitor the coolant antifreeze level. So I closed the bleeder valve tight. I drove the car 20 to 50 miles. After driving a couple of miles, the coolant reservoir antifreeze went low. I filled up the coolant reservoir to the full level again. Many miles later, the coolant level went low again. So I filled up the coolant reservoir antifreeze to the full level again. Many miles later, the coolant level stopped, going low. I noticed a little dry coolant, leak line coming out from the coolant reservoir. I will install a new coolant reservoir cap as well. The operating temperature should be between 195 and 220 degrees Fahrenheit. You can go to livedata.under-ECT to monitor engine coolant temperature. But hold on 1 minute. I forgot one important step. In the process of doing this, I forgot to turn on the heater. It is important to turn on the heater to ensure coolant flows through the heater core. Air can become trapped in the cooling system during a coolant change or repair, particularly in the heater core and other high points of the system. A properly bled system ensures the heater core is filled with coolant, allowing for efficient heat transfer and preventing cold air from blowing from the vents. I noticed the coolant level went a little bit low once I turned on the heater. A lot of hot air was coming out from the vents when I turned on the heater. The coolant level went up a little bit when I opened the radiator cap. Now I started to monitor the engine coolant temperature with the heater turned on. Hit a like or comment. If you like this video, do not forget to subscribe, and like always, I appreciate you, and until next time. It's always good to keep notes of things you do to your car.